A few days ago I made a video talking about whether or not Elden Ring was going to be easy, and the whole time I was making that video there was a thought lingering in the back of my head that I really wanted to articulate under a different umbrella of thought. And it has to do with a point that I talked about in the video of Elden Ring bringing in a new market of players. Because the more I think about it, the more I realize that that idea alone is going to change From Software forever. Because Elden Ring has done something that the other games have never achieved. Elden Ring has generated a hype level that none of the other Souls games and Souls-likes have ever come close to. And with this achievement, it's inevitably brought in a new wave of players that have never experienced something like this. And it's going to be very interesting to figure out exactly how this affects the games that we get moving forward. And we're going to break down all of those ideas, both the good and the bad, coming up. We've waited almost 5 years for Elden Ring to come out, and now that the game is less than a week away, this final stretch feels longer than anything I've experienced so far. So it's great to have a game like Raid Shadow Legends to help us make the wait a little bit less painful. One of the biggest appeals about the Souls games is getting sucked into the combat in fights with the big bosses of the game, and lately that's been one of the biggest things that they've been integrating into the game, such as the Voidkeep dungeon boss Malak Kavar, who's gonna be our boss spotlight for the day. Once a priest of the light, he had an epiphany while stargazing. That light was nothing without darkness. This boss likes to work with poison debuffs, so you're gonna want to bring some shields and healing to take him down. With a lot of new things happening, there's never been a better time to get into Raid. So, what's new with the game? Raid has a ton going on this month, with a fresh rotation of the brutal Hydra boss, a new epic champion, tons of in-game events and tournaments every day, including the new Valentine's Day event where you can unlock this champion. Like I said, there's never been a better time to get into the game. So if you click my link in the description or scan the QR code here, there's a lot of great bonuses you can get right off the bat. You'll get a free epic champion, 200,000 silver, an energy refill and XP boost, and an ancient shard so you can summon champions the second you get in the game. And all of that will be waiting for you right here. So thank you to Raid for sponsoring this video, and let's get back into the topic. When it comes to the Souls games and the history of their player base, we have to admit that for the longest time it's been mostly a niche audience. Even if we think about Sekiro, which ended up going on to win Game of the Year, that game didn't have this same hype level and mass appeal that Elden Ring does. When it comes to Elden Ring, they're going to be dealing with a much more casual audience. A vast majority of the marketing for this game has been aimed at communicating the message that more people are going to be finishing this game than past Souls-likes. As we talked about in the last video, that was the point Miyazaki really tried to drive home. And so we have to accept the fact that there's going to be a lot of people playing this game that haven't experienced the challenge. Perhaps they've heard about Dark Souls in the past and know how notoriously hard it is, but they haven't actually experienced coming up to a boss in a game like this and being stuck for a long time. And I think the vast influx of these players is really going to affect From Software moving forward. And so let's start by talking about how this could potentially negatively affect the culture around these games. If you've been in the Souls community for a long time, then you've probably heard the term casual, and you've probably heard that used in a negative connotation, because the term casual refers to somebody who typically isn't very good at these games. And it's undeniable that when Elden Ring comes out, we're gonna get more people like that than ever before. But when you have a lot of people like this picking up these games for the first time, a lot of them are gonna put the game down after being frustrated, and then in turn that's gonna cause them to have a negative outlook. Now with the Souls games, we've dealt with this argument of them being potentially too hard for a very long time. But the time I remember it being the worst was immediately after Sekiro released. I remember it trending on Twitter for several days and all the journalists were freaking out because they couldn't beat the game no matter how hard they tried. But it wasn't just the journalists, Sekiro also saw a big influx of new players, and there were a lot of social media campaigns trying to get the game to add an easy mode. Now I'm not going to bring that argument up today, but the reason I say that is to say that Elden Ring is going to suffer this same consequence. I do think that more so than any time in the past, we are going to see this argument brought up way more. But From Software has prepared for this. Elden Ring is designed in a way to accommodate these new players, offering them more routes than ever, and more tools to tackle the the main game. But you guys enlightened me after the last video that based on a lot of the impressions from the people that got to play it early, the game is still just as hard. But I think it's going to be inevitable that this same opinion war happens again on a much larger scale. But the reason I say this will change From Software forever is because I think this has more potential to be a positive than a negative. I think that with Elden Ring trying to be the most accessible of the Souls games, we have the opportunity to end this argument once and for all. And I think the best way to do that would be to communicate the message that the difficulty is the good thing. Now, of course, we've been doing that for a long time. However, with Elden Ring's new approach to accessibility, and the game being designed in a way where new players aren't going to get stuck, the opportunity is now there for them to actually listen, and actually be able to experience what we're saying firsthand. I have a lot of friends that I've tried to introduce to the Souls games, and if I'm being honest, a lot of them have been turned off by the difficulty. As longtime Souls fans, we know how rich the experience is when you power through it. But the fact of the matter is, a lot of times when new players are introduced to these games for the first time, they feel that when they get stuck on a boss, that they're simply not good enough to play the game. They don't know that that is part of the experience. And so now with Elden Ring, I do think that will be in the past. Because during the time of Dark Souls, the only real option we had to tell people like that was just to get good. And in retrospect, that may have worked for a few people, but we can't deny that the masses see that as more of an elitist mindset. And so if we take a new approach in Elden Ring of showing these players the good if they do try to persevere, and helping them find new routes through the open world to avoid getting stuck, then we can introduce a lot of these new players to the positive sides of the Souls games, and shed the stigma of difficulty once and for all. So if we achieve this, how will that affect From Software moving forward? I think if we can finally put this argument of difficulty to rest, it would allow them a lot more creative freedom without having to worry about that pressure of accidentally making the game too hard for new players. That's not to say that Elden Ring is going to suffer because of that pressure. I do believe Elden Ring will find that perfect balance of difficulty for the veteran players and accessibility for the new players. And the best tool they use to accomplish that is the open world. But I know open worlds aren't for everybody, and From Software probably doesn't want to make every game going forward an open world. So if we can get the masses accustomed to the gameplay and use Elden Ring as the means to convince all these new players about the benefits of the Souls style of games, then that would allow From Software to make anything they want without the stigma. And it would finally change the outlook as Dark Souls being difficult for the sake of being difficult, to making the games known for the things we love, such as the art style, the obtuse storytelling, and the addictive combat. But what do you guys think? Do you think the opportunity is there? Or do you think this may be a trend in the negative of the Souls games eventually becoming like everything else and losing what makes them unique? A great video that I think every new Souls player needs to see is Ratatosker's guide on why games shouldn't have an easy mode. I think it's the perfect counter argument to all the discourse we see on the Souls games being too hard, and perfectly elaborates on why it's a good thing. So I would highly encourage you to share that video with people that are going to be getting into these games for the first time, and approach frustrated new players with encouragement rather than gatekeeping, because I think at the end of the day, it'll be better for everybody. But guys, that's going to pretty much do it for the video. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like on it and subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll catch you in the next one.